Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome to the Front Row Movie Reviews, the podcast for people who actually like movies and TV. And welcome to Discovering Star Trek, our weekly review of every episode of Star Trek Discovery, whether we like it or not. And I am Scott, and with me, as always, is
Mike
and Blake.
Blake is back from his Percocet away mission, I guess. I don't know.
That was a fun mission.
I bet it was. More fun than us reviewing the episode last week. Although we have 46 comments on the video that tell us that we were way too harsh on it. And we rated it as an average Star Trek episode. I don't understand.
It's true.
I don't understand.
Just wait until this one.
Foreshadowing much? So we are here to discuss, hold on, I gotta read it because it's so long. Magic that makes the sanest man go mad.
I didn't really get that in this episode, but...
Or if you prefer Groundhog Day. Or if you prefer Edge of Tomorrow. Or if you prefer Live, Die, Repeat. Or if you prefer Cause and Effect. I could keep going. But
Go
I
on.
won't.
Do it then.
Okay, let's go ahead and just dive right into this this time travel story. We'll go with Blake first, and give us your first impressions of Magic, and I'm not going to say the whole title again.
Oh, Scott, I wanted you to read that so I'd have some time to think. This one is... I don't know what to think about this one, actually. It was an interesting episode. There's a lot in it I didn't like. There's a few things I did, and I'm sure there might be some disagreement over some of that, but yeah, it's going to be interesting when we get into the likes and dislikes on this one.
Well,
We've definitely seen it before.
Creeperbot, we already had somebody pop onto the live chat, says it's his favorite episode so far. Okay, Creeper, you're going to have to tell us why. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, same as what Blake was saying. Overall, I probably thought this was the weakest episode to date. That said, I mean, there were fun elements. It had some redeeming qualities. As much as I didn't like, really, as much as I didn't like Harry Mudd before, I actually thought this episode was kind of intriguing in a way, and kind of liked that whole, character interaction and stuff. But there's plenty of bad stuff to talk about. Overall, it was kind of a throwaway. It's what it felt like.
It was definitely a filler episode. Whether you liked it or not, you can't deny it's a filler episode, and especially on serialized TV. For me, we knew what we were getting into although I was going to say that the trailer for this week's episode kind of gave it away, but next week's trailer doesn't tell me squat. So, but this trailer told me that we were going to have, as I already mentioned, Cause and Effect from TNG. Groundhog Day, which is a story trope that's been used not just in Star Trek but all over the place.
Yep.
But yeah, no, I mean, I liked Mudd the first time he showed up, and I think he's still a fun character. I like the fact that he showed up in an Andorian spacesuit, which tells me he's been doing stuff other than just screwing with Discovery. But yeah, I mean, you have to work really hard for me to get me to like this because I've seen it so much. And the fact that Groundhog Day is one of my favorite movies of all time, you have to really try to make this story work for me. And we'll get into if it worked or not. Spoilers, it didn't.
Yep.
Okay, before we bash the hell out of this thing, Mike, tell me what you liked about the episode.
I kind of already said it, I guess. I did like Harry Mudd. I gotta say, as much as I was... And I don't have anything against Rainn Wilson, except that I have a hard time not seeing Dwight Schrute. And so, and I'm not familiar with whatever other works he's done. But so seeing him as Harry Mudd in the first, that other episode this season, I just couldn't get past it. And I kind of felt like his portrayal of Harry Mudd was a little over the top as I watched it. And then I kind of had to reflect on Harry Mudd's appearances in TOS, and I was like, wow, all right, you know what? That's actually pretty good. And this one kind of felt the same way. So I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed him as a character in this episode. There were a lot of little cool touches like the Andorian spacesuit. I was really kind of tickled with when I first saw it. It took me a minute to figure out what the hell I was looking at. But yeah, it was a fun episode. We'll talk about more in the negatives, but as you were saying, it's a story trope that we've seen lots of times over and over and over and over in different sci-fi series, not just Trek. And I was looking for him to do something different. But overall, it was still fun.
Blake, what say you?
I mean, I would agree it was a fun episode, and it had those moments. I liked that it went in a bit more into kind of explaining the changes to Stamets, which, I mean, you say it's a filler episode. I think that was its whole point, basically, was how do we explain the changes that Stamets is going through? And it was a vehicle for that. So I did kind of like that part of it. And I also really liked Mudd in this one, which kind of gets into one of my biggest annoyances with this episode, so we'll save that part. But I did like Mudd.
Yeah, Creeper likes Mudd too. Creeper says this is one of his favorite episodes because I have had serious problems with every other episode. This one was familiar, Star Trek story. So basically, Creeper liked this episode because it wasn't the last ones. So we got that going for us.
But the Creeper didn't see any glaring continuity flaws. I'm sure we'll get there in a minute.
I agree with both of you. I mean, as I already mentioned in my opening statement, I guess, I like Mudd as a character. I think Rains is doing a great job at not only kind of doing what Mudd was in the original series, but also making it his own. He's a much darker, much like all of Discovery, he's a much darker character in this. But it works. I mean, he's a smuggler in the time of war. He's going to have to be a guy who's going to kill people a lot, and a guy who's going to have to do his own thing. I'll hold off on that stuff until what I don't like. I'll be good here. I also, this was one of the episodes where we got to kind of see the bridge crew a little bit more than usual, and I like the bridge crew. I like what I'm seeing out of those guys, and I will complain about that later on again when we get to things we don't like. I'm seeing a pattern here. Oops. We got space whales.
We did get space whales.
Space whales are cool. That's all I got.
All right, let the roasting commence.
John, who's I'm not in the chat right now, unfortunately, is going to berate me the entire week about how I'm terrible to the show. But believe it or not, I actually like this show, but this episode sucked. Okay. Which,
by the way, apparently a lot of people like the show, and we're getting another season. Did we talk about that yet?
Yeah, it's been renewed. Let's save that discussion for predictions. But yeah, I agree. We need to talk about that more. I also want to complain about CBS streaming again, but I'll save that for the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go ahead and start talking about things we didn't like. This is going to be the shortest episode ever. Okay. Creeper says, sorry, but continuity issues I meant in regards to the greater Star Trek universe. The time travel in the episode was rough. And he liked this episode. But no, I mean, Creeper, you're right. And I think unless the other two guys think differently, I didn't see anything in this episode that's going to completely screw up the timeline or make Discovery stand out more than it did. There are a couple things I have questions about, including Mudd knows everything about the spore drive now. So even if Stella's going to keep him locked away in her daddy's basement, he has all the secrets, and that they didn't deal with that. And even though his time travel device disappeared when it ran out the clock, I don't understand that at all. But they said he's used it before because he was on Beta Z and stole from the bank. So he's got more of these things. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle the fact that, or not handle the fact that he can, manipulate time whenever he feels like.
And who this fourth dimensional race was that he picked this up from.
That was one of the things I did like.
Okay.
Hold on. As much as I hate some of the stuff going on in this show, one of the things I can never bash on is it is at least trying to make the technobabble make sense.
Yeah.
Okay. It's talked about quantum physics. It went a little loopy with the biological quantum physics, but I mean, it's all kind of something that could work. We're definitely dealing with quantum entanglement when it comes to Sanest.
And that's Trek in general. I always feel like Trek has made at least a modest effort to be grounded in something.
I see that in Raise You Voyager.
All right.
Voyager never tried.
No, it didn't.
But so, I mean, the idea that they bring up fourth dimensions, and, honestly, I think the common person doesn't understand what fourth dimension is, because whenever you do a theme park or something, it's like Terminator 4D or whatever. I'm like, no, that's not fourth dimension. You're not traveling through time. So the fact
you are. It's just a really unremarkable rate.
Yeah, but so I mean, the whole idea is the fact that they actually use the term fourth dimension. I did enjoy that a little bit, but yeah, okay. Let's see,
I'll throw out one more little thing I liked that I just thought of, and that was the appearance of, and I already forgot his name, Stella and her dad.
Stella got a group back. What?
Okay, so I thought it was cute that in TOS, you look back at not just the Trek uniforms and the interior decoration of the Enterprise, but the costumes for anybody that is not a member of the military, Starfleet, or whatever. Very outlandish, very 70s, shall we say. And so the appearance of Stella and her dad and their outfits, I kind of was like, wow, that is the most TOS thing I have yet seen in this entire series.
I completely agree with you on that. Then the thing I was thinking when I saw the Baron's outfit is that looks like something that Mudd wears in TOS. So you can kind of see that connection where he probably raided the Baron's wardrobe before he left.
That was a nice touch.
Mm-hmm.
And Stella, the actress who played Stella, definitely went back and watched that episode of TOS with the android Stella, because when she comes off the transporter pad, it just sounds like Stella. Hawk, Fenton! So yeah, we like that. Yay! All
right. Onward.
Moving on. Blake, what did you not like about this episode?
Okay, so what I didn't like... Okay, and I'm just going to throw it out there. We were getting awfully close to Beastie Boys and Star Trek again with that whole party at the opening. So that, plus, what was that going on at one point? Kind of Starfleet beer pong type party.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the party scene seemed a little interesting, just given how we've seen other Star Trek recreation. Which I'm not saying it needs to be boring concert hall like TNG, but it was just kind of interesting seeing that party scene and how they framed that.
Not everybody sips prune juice and plays chess.
Yeah, but.
Yeah,
it seemed a little over the top, I guess is what I'm getting at with that.
I agree. Although I will say I've turned on the radio fairly recently, and I agree that the 80s do still have the best music, so I'm not surprised that that's what they're playing at the party.
True.
It comes back every 20 or 30 years, right?
Yeah, so it's just insightful again.
I'm not going to really bash on the party scene too much. I do agree it's kind of out of place for Star Trek, but, if I'm going to go off the whole, the idea that these guys have been through war, although I'm still questioning only 10,000 dead. You're making this sound like a galactic war, and you keep showing us the battle lines and the Klingons and the Federation going at it. And the only thing stopping the Federation from falling apart is Discovery warping in and warping out with the spore drive. But there's only 10,000 casualties on the Federation side.
Yeah.
I mean, I get that the starships are pretty small here, but we've already saw one colony get bombarded.
Yeah,
the Klingons are going to take more casualties. I mean, are going to give more casualties out than 10,000 people.
We'll talk about predictions, but I think we're going to see some of that next episode.
I certainly hope so, because I mean, I don't want death and destruction all the time. But if you're going to make this a war, grow a pair of balls and make it a war.
Yeah, it doesn't feel very impactful.
And I agree with that. That's another one on my list. Is that they keep making this out to be this huge conflict. But you've got these really small numbers showing up. I mean, I don't think they need to go full DS9 with the Dominion War on it, but I mean, it just feels like they're trying to make this thing bigger than what they're making it feel like through the numbers. And so that's kind of one of them.
Yeah.
What was that, Mike?
It's just a silly choice. I agree. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you.
Yeah, now it's talking over you.
I mean, it's a silly choice that they do keep throwing out these numbers, and there's absolutely nothing that's preventing them from making the numbers bigger. They just aren't.
No, I mean, it was 8,000 plus when Burnham joined the crew. It has been at least several months since Burnham joined the crew at this point. and we've only had 2,000 more, which means, okay, I get Discovery is making the war more palatable and able to handle in terms of the fight, but still, I just expect more than 10,000 casualties. Either the Federation is very, very small, or you're not showing me a real war.
Well, and that gets into the other part. The opening monologue kind of went into Discovery's becoming the most important asset. But again, we've never heard of this anywhere else throughout the timeline of continuity.
You're right.
So, they're saying this is this huge, integral, central piece that we've never heard anything of in a war that we know nothing about.
Yeah. And, and that's the problem again, and I keep hitting on this probably too much. That's the problem with a prequel, is you have to get everything to line up within 10 years. And the more you put an importance on this ship, the harder it's going to be to make it all mesh together. And going back real quick, Blake, you said you didn't really need Deep Space Nine, but just remember that oh shit moment when the brain took out San Francisco.
Yeah,
and it's like attacked Earth, and it was like a teaser for the episode. It was just like it happened. That is the kind of thing that shows you that the Dominion War had teeth. Something was going on. And you're right, we don't need all-out space battles all the time, but just little stuff like that made the Dominion War have weight. And this Klingon Federation War, for me right now, has no weight.
Yeah. I mean, there's the one scene where they were attacking the colony and the captain played the SOS distress call that made it sound desperate and tried to play on everybody's emotions, but there needs to be more of that, or at least reference to it. If the Klingons attacked one colony, why aren't they attacking all these other colonies, and why aren't we hearing about that?
Yeah.
The only possible explanation I can come up with is that the death toll right now is only talking about Starfleet officers and not civilians or something.
Which doesn't sound like inspiration to me.
No. So.
Well, I think my other kind of dislike with this one gets into the time travel piece. I just don't think they used it well. I don't think they explained it well, especially when, Burnham's talking about, the Vulcans knew about this type of crystal. When even going back into some of the older Star Trek, the Vulcans were even hesitant to admit time travel existed or was possible outside of singularities.
And slingshotting yourself around the sun, which surprised Spock when it happened. He didn't even realize you could do it until you did it.
Yeah, so now the Vulcans have had knowledge of this, fourth dimension crystal. But where I get annoyed with the Mudd character in this one is I don't think they needed the time travel to make this episode work. I think they could have had Mudd show up on the ship and literally have a battle of wits with Lorca and the crew without having to have this, 30-minute time reset.
Yeah.
And I think that would have made this a much, much stronger and better episode than what it turned out being.
Yeah, like a cat and mouse where Mudd will go and, change a little bit of computer software so they can't get him and so forth and so on. By the end, you have the very same scene. He's on the bridge, he has the chair, and Lorca's completely locked down and can't do anything about it, but besides say, it's your ship now. You could get to that very same point.
Yeah, you can get to that same ending.
They already thought of how to sneak him aboard the ship, inside the space whale, so they were halfway with the difficult part already.
Yeah, the opening and closing could have stayed and just changed that middle, and you would have had a so much better episode here.
Which, by the way, I mean, we're already in what we don't like, but I like the space whale. I like the idea of seeing something we haven't seen in Star Trek, but makes sense. The whole idea of biological entities that can travel through. I guess we saw it in 10 Man, so we have seen it before, but that's the kind of stuff I want to see in Star Trek, stuff that is just new ideas. So I do appreciate that. Mike, what about you? What did you not like?
I kind of hinted at it again. We all kind of jumped the gun. And I'm not going to be super critical of the episode and nitpick all these little things, but I agree that with what Blake was saying, I think the time travel aspect as it was presented was kind of hackneyed. And we've seen this same thing happen over and over in lots of different formats, different series, different movies, whatever. And I actually kind of have an affinity for these sorts of episodes, these sorts of time travel, plays. One of my favorite episodes is the TNG episode with, Kelsey Grammer. I can't remember the name of it. That's just how favorite it is to me. Window of Opportunity and SG-1 is one of my probably my favorite episode of that entire series, and I've watched it all. it was a fun aspect in Babylon 5, etc. So when I saw in the preview that that's what this episode was going to be, I was actually really excited because I thought from what we'd seen in this show up till now, I was really hopeful that we were going to get that story, but they were going to put a different spin on it. And I'm disappointed to say that they didn't put a different spin on it. And in fact, it was kind of lazy feeling. Stamets was really a MacGuffin to explain away the whole thing. And I'm not so sure that it really did advance the character or act as a vessel for what's going on with him, much more than to say that he's different. Well, we could have got that in any number of different ways that were better than this. Mm-hmm. The other weak point in this episode, unfortunately, as much as we've praised character interactions, I still don't dislike Michael, but I don't like Michael either. And
I don't think Michael likes Michael, so.
I don't really like Tilly. And, well, I'm not sure what to make of Stamets anymore. I was never really sure what to make of him in the beginning, but now he's a completely different character.
You mean Mere Stamets?
Yes. So, all in all, I kind of felt like this episode, aside from doing the time travel story, also really weirdly tried to pack in a love story of sorts, with a lot of really wooden, unnatural feeling characters.
A love story between two of the most bland characters on the show.
I don't know that I don't know that I'll say Ash is bland. We've only seen him for one episode, so we don't really know hardly anything.
We saw him in the pilot. He was albino at the time.
Well, yes, okay. He's the greatest Klingon spy ever. Which I do still think that's true, but
I do think I get what the writers are doing with, especially on like Michael, is I think they're trying to get her to get from, Vulcan to, discovering her humanity. I don't think they're doing it well.
No,
I think that's what they're trying to do.
I agree. And there was a lot of kind of heavy-handedness with that end goal in this episode, but again, I just feel like her character is so awkward, and many of the other characters that she interacted with in this episode.
Blake saw it too.
Uh-oh.
Creeper wins tonight.
Yep.
I'll get to that Creeper in a minute. Just hold on.
Gotcha. All right.
Creeper wins.
That is really all I have to say about it, though. I felt like this time the character interactions were a low point in the episode.
Well, I'll tell you, before I get into my stuff, we may be the minority here, guys.
Yeah.
We all have I'm going to mispronounce this, but Alvia Anna. I love this episode. Best yet. The writing was top notch. I dislike Mudd and love that he was minimal while being pivotal. The way they weave multiple threads together was top notch. So we may be in the minority here, but I'm going to agree with you guys. A couple other things, just feeding off what you, Mike and Blake have said. I mentioned I like the bridge crew and what we've seen the bridge a little bit more than what we have so far. But that's one of the things that is really annoying me about this show is they have picked Michael to follow. So like this episode, which should have been a Stamets episode. Stamets is the one experiencing the time jumps. So we should be following Stamets. But because the show has decided that Michael is the story, we have to follow Michael through all of this, which makes absolutely no sense to me for this kind of storytelling. But when you lock in on one character, that's what you have to do.
It's interesting, and as much as I do agree that they have kind of set Michael as the centerpiece of this entire thing, and that's different in Trek. Any given Trek episode could be a Data, TNG could be a Data episode, a LaForge episode, a Worf episode. Same with any of the Trek series. This one has been a little bit different. Now, arguably, we did get a Lorca episode semi-recently, but that's kind of the exception to what has been the rule. And I know there's not a lot of episodes to talk about history-wise here, but I honestly am sort of at this point questioning whether we will get a Stamets episode at some point, because I feel like they're going to try to stay shackled to Michael.
Yeah, and that's a problem because, and I've kind of said this before, I don't know if it's the writing that is a problem with Michael or if it's the actress, Green, who I didn't like her in Walking Dead. I thought she was wooden, and I was hoping this would be able to show her differently. and I wanted to like her, but she's just as wooden in this as she was in Walking Dead. And if you've seen Walking Dead, I mean, the best part about that character is when she died. Spoilers, she's dead. So when you give me the most wooden character as the one to latch onto, we're going to have a problem. At least I'm going to have a problem. So another thing, and this is where I can bring in Creeper, because I'm going to talk about Tilly now. Creeper says Tilly is rivaling TNG's Alexander Rishenko as most annoying character to me. Now, I will say, Alexander really didn't get annoying for me until Deep Space Nine, when he was trying to be a Klingon and didn't do very well at it. But I can see, I can see what you're going for there. Maybe more Will Wheaton, maybe.
I don't know. She's another one that I don't feel like they've quite figured out what her deal is. She's the one who's getting the most characterization, for better or worse. We know more about her than we know. We know more about her than we know about Michael. Well, Stamets has gotten a pretty heavy characterization as well, but
but his is interesting just because it keeps bouncing around so much. But
well, now it does, yeah.
But I also going to Stamets real quick. I know why he was so heavy-handed in the first couple episodes now, because they were building to this switch, so they had to make him an asshole. So when he switches and he starts hugging people for random reasons, it's a very sudden change. If he was like a normal guy, it wouldn't have been as dynamic a change. So that's why they went full tilt asshole in the first couple episodes.
Yeah, no, I get it. But I don't know. Like I said, I feel like I wasn't sure what the goal of Tilly was at first. They almost made her seem like eccentric, OCD, or something like, and then in this episode we see this different side of her where she's basically telling everybody, that the audience, that she's like a party girl. Yeah,
and see, that's what I don't know how to feel about that. Again, I appreciate that she's getting the most characterization, but you just told me that this girl wants to be a captain. Her main goal in life is to be a captain of a starship, and she's working towards that goal. Now you're telling me she's on a soldier kick, but then she's on a musician kick, to a point where Stamets makes the joke, and he's in a band. I mean, that just makes the character sound, flighty.
Well, and
we have no women on here to actually, talk about this, because we're a very diverse bunch of 3 white guys. But so I actually wonder how women will take that. But I took it as offensive.
Well, and you go back to the first episode too, that she appeared in, and she, had all these allergies, couldn't have a roommate, couldn't have this, couldn't have that, and now she's, life of the party. Yeah, it just seems like that was a little bit of shift in her too.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't even know that I didn't find it offensive or anything. And I mean, people will be people, and everybody has 2 different sides, which I think is what the goal of this episode was. In a lot of ways, they were trying to show the personal side of, the bridge crew, some of the people that we've seen in their dressed down, like trying to forget that they're at war kind of thing. But it was just clumsily done to the point that it made almost no sense for a lot of the characters we've met so far. You can't portray a character one way for 6 episodes, or I guess 4 episodes, and then all of a sudden throw a right hook with no context and expect it to go down smoothly. And I feel like that's what happened.
Well, and that, I think, is part of the good thing about streaming television. Is I've always loved the fact that we get shorter seasons, so we can be more devoted to the story and have a clean narrative. But when you have a filler episode like this, you run into that problem. I just finished binge watching Stranger Things, and I know it just came out, so I won't spoil anything because most people haven't binge watched it yet.
I haven't seen it yet. So.
But there is a filler episode, and oh my God, it's a filler episode. And when you have such a good show, because Stranger Things season 2 I think is better than season 1, when you have a filler episode that really legitimately makes no difference in the storyline, it stands out. And I think this is the same idea, and it makes it even harder to watch. But real quick on the characterization too, as I was mentioning, we got to see the bridge crew. There is a lot of characters in here I'm interested to find out more about. I want to know about the girl who was on the Shinzu and got half her face melted off. I want to know more about her. She looks kind of pissed.
some of these characters, they've made a point of showing them to us every episode.
The
which
robot
is awesome.
dude on the crew. Robot dude.
Yeah.
I want to know about Robot Dude.
I mean,
and even Mud makes the joke. Unnamed communications officer. Yeah, because we have never seen the crew. I don't know who these people are.
And discount Christian Bale is still there.
But I mean, unless you target Saru, Michael, Tilly, or almost Tyler at this point, I don't care. When you melt the communications officer, I don't care because I don't know who that dude is. Although you did kill the black guy first, congratulations. But aside from that, I don't know who that is. If you melt the robot dude, I have more off of Isaac on because I have to mention Orville every time. I have more off Isaac than that robot dude, so I don't know what the hell's going on with him.
Yeah.
Okay. I could rant more, but I won't.
Well, and again, and that kind of makes this episode hurt just a little bit more because, as you said, this did feel like a filler episode, and it's a filler episode where they could have used that time more wisely to introduce us to more characters.
And also,
or do anything better than what they.
Agree. Creeper makes a good point too, because Creeper is very active on the chat. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Love it.
I wasn't sure why Michael was believing Stamets faster and faster each time. It almost seemed like Michael was outside the time loop towards the end. Sure, she told him the secret, but still seems to be convenient to me. I completely agree with that. I was noticing the same thing.
Yeah.
I actually like the fact that Stamets walks up to her and says, "You never have been in love." That's something that will obviously get your attention if no one knows that. So that was a smart thing to do. But it wasn't something that was universe building, which I was fine with. Don't tell me that you're jealous of Spock or something because I don't care.
Oh God, yeah.
Which is what I expected. I expected something with Sarek or Spock. But I agree. It seemed like, and again, I think that goes back to the problem with this show being centered on one character when that's not Star Trek. Is Michael has to be pivotal to the storyline, which means Michael has to have the power of plot. She has to be clairvoyant just to make the story move, and that's really annoying.
Yeah, well, and it kind of made Stamets at some point feel. He's the guy who is able to get them out of this situation, and yet, what did he choose to do rather than actively try to stop the situation himself? I mean, he implied that he had tried several times and failed, but then Mudd was like, "Well, we've done this 53 times." He actually said how many times the loop had gone through.
He's definitely been doing for a while,
and. At some point it kind of felt like all Stamets was really interested in doing was going and passing the buck to somebody else to go solve the problem.
No one likes me anyway, so you got to talk to him.
Something. It was a little weird. Again,
the scene in engineering kind of confused me, but also was kind of fun when it was like the second or third time jump, and he shoots Mudd in the back and says, "Hi. We've been here before and we're all going to die." I kind of like that. Mm-hmm. But if you shot Mudd, how does he reset the time? Because he obviously, if he just lets it sit there and lets it run, you get outside the time stream and you're done. So Mudd's unconscious on the floor. How did that work? Now, if Stamets would have came over and hit the button or something, that would have made sense. But he didn't do that.
Yeah, it just felt lazy. It felt lazy and poorly done. Like they needed a filler episode for the season. They went, what's the trope that every series does? We'll grab that one. We'll do it kind of half-assedly by trying to pack a love story into it. I mean, and again, for all the criticisms, like I didn't hate this episode. I just didn't feel like it lived up to what we've seen of the series so far.
The one smart thing, and it falls in romantic comedy, so it's kind of annoying for me, but the one smart thing is the idea that these two characters know that they had a first kiss and that they, as Tyler put it, missed it. I think that's kind of an interesting thought, that because it happened in a different time stream, it doesn't count, and you have to think about that. But that's not worth an episode.
Yeah.
Okay.
Agreed.
I think we've bashed this thing enough. Let's go ahead and get into our final thoughts and our scores, and then we'll talk about predictions after that too. And also I'll complain about CBS. So we score these episodes on a 1 through 10, and they are compared to other episodes in the Star Trek franchise. So a 5 would be an average episode of Star Trek. A 10 would be one of the best episodes of Star Trek, and a 1 would be, I don't know. I've mentioned some really bad ones before. Heart of Darkness or something, I don't know. But So let's go to Mike first. Mike, what did you score this 1 through 10? If you have any closing thoughts, throw them out there too.
I'm trying to think of where I've scored some previous episodes. I think the lowest score I've given so far is a 5, and so I'm gonna have to throw this one to the wolves a little bit and say, for me, this was really more of a 3. It's one of those things where there were some aspects of it that I really enjoyed, like Rainn Wilson's Harry Mudd, but overall it just didn't sit well with me.
Blake.
I thought I was going to be the low score here with the 3, but I'm going 3 also on this one. And, and one of the main reasons why for me is I just feel the laziness in the plot with using this whole time travel thing when they could have, honestly, I think, done better. Yeah. So, yeah, I'm going with the 3 on this one.
I swear I had this score planned before I walked in here, so we're not just like following suit, but I'm going to give it a 3 as well. I think it is a below average episode. I was not really impressed with it. I'm not going to remember it come tomorrow, and the series isn't going to want me to remember it either because nothing happened in this episode that's going to tie into anything aside from maybe Stamets himself. But it's Lorca and Saru didn't turn the lizards and screw each other, so it's not a 1 or 2. Threshold for those playing the home game. But I'm going to have to give it a below average score. Now, again, we may be very well in the minority here because Creeper has already said he enjoyed the episode. Elviana has said, I'll go with an 8. And it would have been a 9 if not for Mudd. And she also says Blake is wrong.
Well, I mean,
Well, she also said I'm a friend, but I'm wrong. So
yeah, well,
well, I'm your friend, and I always think you're wrong too. So,
oh yeah,
but not tonight. So yeah, I mean, I think all of us here agree that it is the weakest episode of Discovery so far. I got it right. Elviana, did I get that right? Sweet. I know how to pronounce usernames. Yay. Okay. So let's go ahead and start talking about predictions a little bit. As Mike already mentioned, the CBS has renewed this for season 2. Based on everything we've heard, it will probably come out in 2019. That's what the showrunners have said, that they're planning on a 2019 release. I wouldn't doubt if it actually goes for what they originally had planned for Discovery season 1 to come out. So looking at the first part of 2019, so almost a year off. Mm-hmm. But let's talk a little bit about where we see season 1 going. We have 2 episodes left until the hiatus. So Blake, where do you see this going from here?
So I still think this episode was used as kind of a setup, especially around Stamets. Getting into the changes, and they even kind of talked about, the effects of that spore drive it's having on him, where he's transcending time, dimensions. That
he's turning into a god, basically.
And I see this going one of 2 directions with him. This is either, further building on that introduction to the mirror universe, which we know is coming, mm-hmm. or, this could be the prequel version of what happens with Gary Mitchell in the original series, mm-hmm. where we see that. I could see either of those directions coming out of this because they're setting it up where it could go either way. Mm-hmm. And it could go both ways for all we know with what they could be planning. Because they've said they're going to be throwing into things that were in the original series. So prediction-wise, I think that's where we're headed. Is this episode served to kind of show the changes in Stamets, and they had to build a story around it, and they got lazy doing it.
Mike, what about you?
I don't know that my prediction changes a whole lot. I'm a little fuzzy on where I think this is all going. As far as we haven't seen much of the Klingon side of things still, unless Ash is a secret Klingon.
He is.
But yeah, I think this is all building into Mirror Universe. There was definitely a nod to the changes with Stamets in this episode. There's no denying that. It was pretty clumsy and ham-fisted, but it was there for all to see. And I guess that's as far as I can really say as far as predictions go. I'm not sure what's going to happen other than that we're going to get some Mirror Universe. But I'm really intrigued by what's going to happen with season 2 and whether it's going to end up being a completely different series again or not. Because at this point, we had no season 1. filmed completely in its entirety before we knew season 2 was going to happen, or at least that's what we think.
The writers said the same thing. They were not aware of a season 2 when the finale was filmed.
So, I mean, at some point here, as you've kind of pointed out, the Discovery becoming more and more the big deal in this storyline makes it harder and harder to explain away, later. And that's going to be a bigger issue as you start jumping from to a new season. I mean, either the Discovery goes away or something has to give.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and this episode has actually changed a few things for me. I thought for sure that Stamets was already full on Mir at this point, but I think, as Blake has already mentioned, he's transcending that. It's not a matter of him being Mir or not. I think he's every Stamets at all times. And that would explain how he even says, I kind of live outside of the time stream now. So, I mean, he is almost Q-like at this point, being able to move through the fourth and fifth dimension. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays into the Mirror Universe we know is coming. The show writers have said we're going to get a couple episodes in the Mirror Universe, and we only have, 8 episodes left. So at least 2 of those are going to be in the Mirror Universe. And as we've seen, there's a picture floating around of the ISS Discovery. So we're going to get that full bore here sooner rather than later. I think at this point, that may be the mid-season cliffhanger, because as we originally thought, episode 8, so next week, was supposed to be the hiatus. And if you watch the trailer, it looks like they're going into some hardcore territory where even the Discovery's going to get beat up again. Lorca mentions that there's no time to mourn and all that good stuff. So it almost seems like that is kind of a mid-season finale coming up. But obviously, and that was their plan. But then they tacked on episode 9 at the end of this before the hiatus. So I'm intrigued to see what episode 9 is and why it had to move from next year to the end of this half season. So I'm thinking episode 9 is going to be either a Mirror Universe episode, or it's going to end in the Mirror Universe, and that will be our kind of our tag for the end of the half season. I still think Tyler is definitely Vogue. They're making him too. He's too nice to a fault. He's perfect. Even Tilly thinks he's perfect. There's nothing wrong with Tyler. He is the everyman. And when you have an everyman like this in sci-fi, he usually turns out to either die, Babylon 5, or he turns out to be evil. And I can see them really hyping up this Michael and Tyler thing, Tyler. And so when he does turn on them, then Michael has to deal with that too. And because she's the most important character ever, it gives her something else to deal with. So I definitely think he's still Vogue. But I don't think we've seen the last of Mudd either, because they said he's going to be in several episodes. And again, I go back to what I said earlier. Mudd has a lot more information now that has to be utilized. He knows about the spore drive. He knows how it works. And that's one thing I didn't mention on my likes. They did answer a complaint that we had last episode is how is this actually working where Stamets isn't, killing himself every time. And they answer that for us with the implants. So they are thinking about that kind of stuff, and I appreciate that. But Mudd knows about that. He also knows that Burnham is on Discovery, and the Klingons really don't, because if this is Vogue is not really connected with the Empire anymore. So the Empire doesn't know that she's there. So when Mudd tells them, then the Klingons are going to be more interested in Discovery than they are now. So I think that's going to happen sooner or later. Let's see what Creeper had to say. Stamets and his doctor boyfriend combined DNA to have a child and name it Charlie X. Okay. So, is there anything else we want to talk about before we draw this one to a close?
I don't think I've got anything else.
I got nothing.
I'm going to go watch Groundhog Day and then Edge of Tomorrow, because they're both better stories for this. Hell, I'm going to go watch Cause and Effect because we get to see poker over and over and over again. And I'll take guys playing poker over the party scene every day of the week.
And damn, those disco shirts came back this episode.
they're really trying to push the disco shirts.
Okay.
And by the way,
so they put an actual disco on the ship now to go with the disco shirt. So there you go. Now they're explained.
It was more ravey than disco, but I see where you're going. Also, where in Starfleet regs is it okay to take the party out into the hallway? Because we have Stamets and Michael dancing in the middle of the corridor. We got two Starfleet officers or Starfleet whatever just completely necking in the hallway right behind them. I mean, I've never seen that on a military ship. I mean, at least keep it in your quarters, whatever.
Yeah.
Now I'm nitpicking.
It's a science vessel, remember?
Speaking of nitpicking, did anyone notice what the star date was for this thing?
No.
2137.2. I don't understand that. Because I mean, okay, if they're doing like Star Trek 2009, they're just using the years. It would be 22 something. If they're using TOS, it would have been 4000 something. But now 2137, we have changed the star dates again, and I am really confused. That's just me.
They probably fly around at like warp 59 too.
Well, now we go in the speed of quantum, so it doesn't matter.
There you go.
But one other thing I will say that I liked how Mudd was very meta in this episode, and I should have mentioned this earlier. I mentioned that he made fun of the communications officer for not having a name, but he also pointed out there's a lot of ways to destroy this ship. It's almost a design flaw. I like that.
I laughed out loud at that remark. Yep.
I was like, thank you, Mudd, for pointing out what we pointed out for 6 episodes. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Creeper says it was Mudd who said the date. Meyer, he didn't know. No, because at the beginning, Michael gives a star date too, and she says 2137 as well. So I have no idea where we are with start dates now. But now I'm just nitpicking, so I should stop because I get yelled at when I nitpick. You can send your comments to the frontrow@gmail.com.
Scott, you're yelled at no matter what.
I just get out the newspaper blanket as it's bound to happen sooner or later. Inside reference. Okay. So again, you can
copy the Oregonian right over.
You can send all your hate mail to the frontrow@gmail.com. You can find us at thefrontrow.reviews.com. You can also find us on all your social media. And we will be back here next Sunday night around 9:30 Central Time, roughly, to talk about the next episode, where it looks like more stuff happens in this episode, which I'm looking forward to. And Creeper says, of course you're right, I'm dumb. I was like, yes, Creeper, yes you are. And I appreciate you pointing that out to everybody.
Wow.
No?
Wow, Scott.
You can send your hate mail too. No, I really, really do. We always want to thank the folks who are in our chat room with us. You definitely add to the show, definitely. So Creeper, thank you. Elviana, thank you very much. And anyone else who is watching and lurking, I see you. Be sure to chime in next time and help us 3 white guys talk about females and diversity.
Chime in, but don't encourage Scott.
I don't need encouragement.
Key rule: we do not encourage Scott.
Don't feed the bears. Okay, understood. Creeper says he's sending so much hate mail. Bring it. Bring it. Okay, well, until next episode, and I didn't look up what the name of the episode is, but whatever the next episode is, I am Scott, and with me has been
Mike
and Blake.
And until next time, we will see you on the couch. And I have no catchy tagline this time. So, bye.